Well, Tiff, thank you so much for being here with me on the Entrepreneurial Success Podcast. I'm truly thrilled to have you here. We've already had a chat before this recording, so we fairly knew a little bit about each other. But before we get started, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about what you do?
For sure. So my name is Tiff, and I'm an online business coach, specifically helping women that are working in a 9 to 5, ambitious women who are wanting to start their online coaching businesses because they know that there is just so much more to the 9 to 5 grind, and really allowing them to start their online coaching businesses, replace their corporate income, and go full time with their businesses. And I'm still currently side hustling myself, and I am working in my 9 to 5, and I'm a digital marketing strategist and project manager as well. So really living the talk that I'm talking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's going to really resonate with the audience here, because we are going to talk about working on your side hustle while still working full time, because that is definitely the way to start. And that is my recommendation. And I'm sure Tiff will agree with that as well for so many reasons. And we'll get into that. But I think one of the things that I really want to get across is a little bit about your story. So talk to me about what made you get to that point where you're like, you know what, I'm going to start a side hustle. I'm going to see where this is taking me. And how has that kind of developed to where you are now?
Yeah, so this is going to be quite a long story. I'll try to sum it up in a few points. So I actually have my bachelor's of interior design, and I know we talked about this yesterday. So I started off as an interior designer straight out of university, and I worked in the industry for 2 years and realized that I absolutely hated it. Especially the first job that I had a very abusive boss. And as someone who has just graduated university, I was thinking, like, there is no way that this is my reality, and there is no way that this is how corporate life is. And in a sense, I was kind of like scarred for life, and I was kind of like already thinking, like, do I really want to have a boss all the time who's yelling and screaming at me? And so I decided to take a digital marketing certificate while I was in my second interior design job, which was a little bit better, but still very, very unfulfilling. And the reason being is that at that point, I really loved yoga. I really loved health and nutrition and whatnot. And I was like, oh, like, why don't I try to start something on the side? Because I had all this time outside of my 9 to 5. In the job that I was working at, I actually had flexible hours. And so I was working at like 6:30, and I would be able to get off at 3 and have all of this time after work to be able to just try different things. And that's kind of like what really started the online coaching business journey and just self-development. And it was a catalyst for me to really start thinking about, could I make this a full-time thing? Yeah. And so I ended up taking a digital marketing certificate to really grow this blog on the side about health and nutrition. And what I realized is that after taking the certificate, I actually loved digital marketing. I never had any idea of what that is, but it really opened my eyes to seeing like what you can do in an online space. And that's kind of like where a lot of companies are growing right now too. And so I ended up applying to other digital marketing jobs and got my first job, which is where I'm at right now. And then at the same time, I was still working on this blog, but because I started to find this new passion for digital marketing, I started to kind of pivot what I was doing. And so I was doing blogging for health and nutrition. And then this first, I guess, pivot that I had in my business was actually doing productivity coaching. Mm-hmm. And the reason being is that a lot of people tell me that I'm organized, and I'm very productive, how I'm able to balance a 9 to 5 and have something on the side. And so I was like, okay, let's try productivity coaching. Tried it for a few months, didn't like it. It got to a point where I was recording my first ever podcast, or my third ever podcast episode. It was called the Productivity with Purpose podcast at that time. And I couldn't come up with any ideas whatsoever. It was kind of like I was just stuck. And I realized like, okay, this niche is not for me and I need to pivot. And so that's when I had an epiphany moment one night where I was just lying in bed and I was like, okay, people say I'm organized because I'm balancing a 9 to 5 and like building something on the side. I love digital marketing and the business aspect of things. Why don't I help other women that are working at a 9 to 5 to start side hustles and start online coaching businesses? And right when I made that decision, everything kind of clicked for me. And it's just been like skyrocketing ever since. That was a long story.
No, it's a great story because I think so many of the audience can really relate to that. And that's the idea here, because there are so many other women who is still in their full-time job and who is kind of hitting that ceiling or getting to that point where they go like, I want to try something different. And maybe they're in a job with that they don't enjoy. Maybe they're in a job where they feel unfulfilled, like you said, and they want to try something new and kind of grow themselves as well. And that resonates right here with the audience, because they're going to go like, yeah, I want to try my own thing. How do I do that? And I think that is so important, because coming from corporate as well, myself working full time, again, also in the interior design industry, that was something for me as well, where I kind of hit the ceiling and I felt, I want to change. I want to do something different. And that's where I started my business also along the side, having that side hustle while working full time. And I think that's what I want to talk about here, because so many people are like, well, like, oh, okay, that's fine. I can do that. But oh my gosh, it is hard work, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
Now, talk to us a little bit, because I want to talk to you about balancing your 9 to 5 and then obviously your side hustle at the same time. Talk to us a little bit about what you do and what your recommendations are.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think for anyone who is starting a side hustle, it's really a great idea to have the end goal in mind. And typically for me, the easiest measurement is like an income goal. And so taking like an income goal, potentially it's what you're making in your 9 to 5. And when I first started my side hustle, it was actually for me to pay off debt. And so at that point, it was $16,000. And I was like, I know that with the side hustle, I want to be able to pay off $16,000. And from there, I ended up breaking down like the different income goals into like quarters and then into months. And so that ended up being like, I don't know, $1,500 a month. And then I broke those down into weekly like tasks that I needed to do in order to actually get myself to the goal. And so I knew that I wanted to do coaching. And so I was thinking to myself, with $1,500 a month, what can I do in order to make this $1,500? And because I was doing coaching, I know that I have to create content on social media. I, at that point, had a YouTube channel. And so I knew that if I kept my tasks focused just on things that were going to get me to that goal, to allow me to get sales calls and then sign clients, those are all of the things that I had to do in my business and nothing more.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they're first starting, especially in the online space, they get shiny object syndrome, and they're seeing like, this person's doing YouTube, this person's doing TikTok, this person's doing like Instagram, this person's doing Facebook. I need to do all of it. And when that happens, especially when you're side hustling, what happens is that you get burnt out, because you already only have very, very limited time to work on things. And you're spreading yourself so thin instead of actually being an expert and just killing it in like one or two things. And there's something that I have learned called skill stacking, where you start at the very bottom with a skill, right? Get really freaking good at it first before you layer on another skill. Get really freaking good at that and then layer on another skill, instead of just like trying to stack everything up at one time. And so I think what has really helped me as a side hustler is just focusing on what is my most important action, which is at this point booking sales calls, and reverse engineering what do I need to do in order to actually get to those sales calls.
Yeah. And I love how you're using the phrase about skill stacking. And I think for so many people starting out or having a side hustle, they go like, oh, but I can do this and I'm good at this and I can do this. And that's where you say they literally stack it up. And I've done exactly that. I've gone like, I can do this because I'm so good at this. And then I started stacking it up. And I got overwhelmed. I wasn't focused, and I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. So I can completely relate to that. And I'm sure for those of you listening in the audience right now, you're going to like, yeah, hands up, that's me. Sounds a little bit like me. But let's talk a little bit about kind of the other aspect, balancing your time, because I think the time is the big aspect here. And I know from my experience, oh my gosh, that was one of the hardest things I had to juggle. So what do you do and what do you recommend there?
For sure. So when I was first starting my side hustle, I was working on it every single day. So Monday to Friday after work. And then I would work on it on Saturday and Sunday full day as well. And it got to a point where I got burnt out. I didn't have any time for myself to be able to just watch Netflix or do things that I wanted to do. And when you're going on overdrive, like 100% of the time, it gets extremely exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And it also kind of like blocks your creativity to some degree too, where you're just forcing yourself to work on something rather than actually like coming from a place of intention and having the space to actually think through things thoroughly. And so what I have done to really manage my time in my business is kind of tying to what I was saying before, where I worked backwards from my goals and really understood like what are the key, let's say 4 to 5 things that I need to do every single week. And from there, I actually work on my business just an hour in the morning and then an hour after work. And so that allows me on Monday to Friday to get 10 things done before the weekend even hits.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started doing that, that was a game changer, because at first I was just working on my business in the evening time, but working like 4 to 5 hours. And then I would get super exhausted, hop into bed. And then the next day I was like, get up early and then start working again. But now this has really allowed me to free up some of the time and still know that by the weekend, I'm going to have 10 business tasks done.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it ranges from like creating Instagram graphics, like just having space to even come up with ideas. I'm really big on just allowing you to have time to think through ideas before you actually create them. And so a day could look like Monday morning, I create some ideas. Like I just brainstorm 5 different ideas that I want to do on Instagram. And then on Monday night, maybe I have a coaching call. And then on Tuesday morning, I'll take those ideas and actually turn them into actual posts and graphics and write up the captions and whatnot. And then maybe on Tuesday evening, I end up automating and scheduling that out. And so I just post it and I just don't even think about it. And so I think it's really what has really helped me in my side hustle is breaking out these larger, more scary tasks into bite-sized pieces and then actually scheduling them out, one thing in the morning and one thing at night, so that you don't have to stress about it over the weekend.
Yeah.
And so during Monday to Friday, I really focus on more of the quote unquote like execution tasks where I'm like, I have to create content, like I have to do sales calls, I have to do client calls. And then on the weekend, usually only Saturday now, I focus more on like big picture concepts and like really like thinking about my business in a higher level. So it's not so like inundated in like the details and the minute little things.
Yeah. And it's so interesting what you're saying, because I remember when I started my side hustle, working full day, coming back in the evening, going, right, I just need an hour, just need to give myself an hour. And I went and sat in front of my computer, put the computer on, I'm going, so what am I going to do now? Okay, I'm right here, do some work. And I was like, okay, let me quickly check to see how many likes I got on that Facebook post or on that Instagram post. And then you go down the rabbit hole, and an hour later, you're still scrolling through all the posts in everybody else's feeds. And that's where I was just like, oh my gosh, this is not working. And funny enough, the fact that you're saying you're working in the evening and in the mornings is very interesting, because I quickly realized that my energy levels was not the same in the evenings as it is in the mornings. And let's face it, in the mornings, you're refreshed and you've had a good night's sleep, and that's when you're at your most creative. So I then moved that around and decided an hour before going to work, and I had an hour and a half commute as well into London. So getting up very early in the morning and spending an hour in front of my computer doing things, I felt that I was doing things 2-3 times as fast in the morning. And I wasn't just being busy, I was actually doing the right things. That helped me immensely. But then, of course, for me personally, I didn't have any children. So weekends, I had a lot more time in my hands as well. So I could focus weekends as well on other things in my business. So I guess it's just to do with managing your time better, but then also finding out where your energy levels are, where you can spend that time.
Yeah. And I also think it's scheduling it in and like sometimes overestimating how long it takes and making sure that you actually fit it within that time. So if I have scheduled something in for 45 minutes, like my head is just down and getting it done.
Yeah.
And it allows me to like be like, oh, I actually accomplished something in like such a short period of time. And so I always plan my week, usually on the weekend, so Saturday or Sunday, so that Monday morning I know that I already have a list of all the things in my calendar of what I need to do.
Yeah.
And it just ends up like getting done so much faster because I know that I'm like racing in a sense against time to go to my 9 to 5. And so I'm like, okay, I need to like do this and just focus on doing it before I actually start my 9 to 5.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you're scheduling it in advance. So it's not like those situations where I, you know, in the beginning ended up sitting in front of my computer going, right, twiddling my thumbs. What am I going to do today?
Totally.
Because it's in your calendar, you know exactly what you need to do. So the moment you sit down, you can start, you know, ticking down the clock and saying, right, I've got my hour. So I know exactly what I need to do within this hour.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
Another thing that you talk about that I get really excited about, and so many people, you know, coaches that I've spoken to as well, ask me this question, and this is something that you're going to talk about, is how to book those high ticket clients. And talk to us a little bit about what you do, because obviously from us being both business coaches, that is something that so many other coaches go like, how do you do that? How's that even possible? So talk to us a little bit about your take on it and how you've kind of monetized and used that.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I think 99% of the clients that I've worked with are all through Instagram. And so I just primarily focus on like Instagram, and I'm like damn good at being on Instagram. And so I think when you think about the customer journey, I really believe that content creation and lead generation really tie hand in hand. And so I think a lot of people get afraid of high ticket sales because they're like, oh my gosh, like no one's going to pay me like $3,000-$4,000 on it. But if you're providing value to your ideal clients and you're providing the right value and directly speaking to them, and you're able to solve their pain points, there's no way that they're not going to want to work with you, because as humans, we're always trying to move from pain to pleasure, right? And so I primarily focus on Instagram, and every single day I focus on providing mini trainings, like literally every single day, providing like 3 to 4 minute mini trainings that are like really juicy. I like get really creative with the Instagram stories and start like drawing stuff on Instagram as well, which is very different and unique from what a lot of other people do, where they're just typing the caption itself. And so just finding different ways that you can be creative to stand out in that market. And so I provide mini trainings and also posts every single week. And from there, because I know the content that I'm delivering is high value and is speaking to my ideal client, people should be reaching out to you instead of you reaching out to them.
Yes.
Right? I think outbound sales is like a tactic in itself, but I also believe like it just feels so much nicer when you create great content and people reach out to you and ask you like, how can they work with you?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people also shy away from doing high ticket sales. Number one, because they don't even talk about their offer. I know even for me, when I first started my business, I was like, why am I not getting sales calls? Like, why am I not getting sales calls? And I was like, I've talked about my offer one time. Like people don't know about it yet. I need to keep repeating it over and over again. And I think there's a statistic that says people have to hear it 7 times for it to really stick. And so I think part of it is really talking about your offer and actually articulating the transformation.
Yeah.
A lot of people focus on talking about the features of the program. Like, this is what you'll get. You're going to get 8 sessions. You're going to get Voxer access. You're going to get this blueprint. But people don't buy the features. They buy the transformation. And so this is where, oh my gosh, we can like talk about so many things, but this is where market research comes in, because if you research your ideal client and you talk and speak to them and understand what their pain points are and where they aspire to be, you simply are just the bridge between those two things. And if you clearly articulate, hey, I can take you from here, and these are the steps that you're going to take to get to here, right? Then your ideal client is naturally going to be gravitated to you, coupling with all of the amazing content that you're putting out and building that authority in the space.
Absolutely. And I love how you're using the phrase that when you put the content out there, people will come to you. And that's what I call the attraction. I talk about my attraction strategy, which is very much with your content as well. So it's about the content and the value that you're putting out there, whether it's a blog, whether it's a podcast, videos. That content is what really gets people attracted to you, who you are, and what you do. And it's so true, because you want to attract those people. Yes, you can do the outbound sales, and you know, they do work, but up to a point. You have to think about the attraction, and the attraction is like a magnet. It's the biggest thing, and it can work and be so powerful if you use it right. So I really like the fact that you're saying that. Now, I'm also interested, because one of the things that I speak about a lot, and a lot of my clients ask me about, is the fact that they go like, oh, but I can be on Instagram, I could be on Facebook, I can be on Twitter, you know, I can be on all these platforms and try and get my clients and build my visibility there. But I love the fact that you are so focused and you're doing all the right things for that, because you're so focused and you're only on Instagram. So you don't focus on Facebook, you don't focus on Twitter, you're not spreading yourself too thin, you're just focused on Instagram. Tell me a little bit about your strategy and about what you do then on Instagram in order to make sure you attract those clients, apart from just posting great content.
Yeah, for sure. I think one other thing I wanted to add to that before I talk about the Instagram strategy is that you have to also ensure that you are creating content in the right places. And so one of the clients that I worked with before was creating content on Instagram, but she's a career coach. And so I was like, why are you posting content on Instagram when most of your ideal client is probably on LinkedIn because they're finding jobs? And so I just wanted to note that as well, to make sure that you actually research your ideal client and figure out where they're hanging out, and don't spend your energy on places that they're not there.
Yeah,
you want to ensure that you're spending your time growing your platform where your ideal clients are actually seeing your content. So with Instagram, one of the strategies that I use is that kind of tying to what I was saying with the Instagram stories, is just being really creative with what you do. And I also sometimes will do like live streams and do collaborations with other people as well. Because on Instagram specifically, you're able to do a live stream and actually invite people on. And so that allows you to actually gain that visibility, not only for your ideal client to see it, but other people that are also watching it from the person that you're doing the live stream with. They're also able to see it, and you're able to see them as well. And so this is a really great way to collaborate with people that are in a very similar niche as you, because most likely once you do a live stream like that, if both of your ideal clients are very similar, and if they resonate with your story, they're probably going to want to reach out to you as well, right? Because you're offering the solution that they want. And that actually happened to me just like a few weeks ago, where I did a live stream and then I started getting discovery calls, and I was like, I've never heard of these people before, but it's because they attended the live stream that I did with someone else. And that allowed me to, again, like explode that visibility that I have.
Yeah. I love the fact that you're saying doing some IG lives, because I find that as well, when you do IG lives, the algorithm works in your favor as well. So, you know, that's where when you go live, let's face it, the first thing people see when they go on is like, oh, this person is live. What's she doing? Before you even start going down the feed, before you start even scrolling down, the first thing you see at the top is somebody is live. So it's going to trigger your interest. You're going to want to go, wonder what they're talking about. So I think IG lives is definitely one of the best, you know, ideas around going there. But it comes back to what we said before about being visible. And I talk about your visibility strategies a lot, about being consistent. I always talk about the 3 C's. You need to have clarity, you need to have consistency, and then commit to it. And then just keep on showing up, doing it over and over again. And because you're so focused and you keep showing up, you're getting the results. So for those of you listening, I want you to really, really get this. So when you start a side hustle, you need to choose one strategy where to be visible on. So let's face it, there's a lot of social media platforms, but you need to go and find out where your ideal clients are hanging out. And we're going to talk about ideal clients in a minute. And then you need to go and write, where and how am I going to be consistent? Where and how am I going to show up the whole time so people can start seeing me? What content I'm going to put out there so I can start attracting those clients to me? And let's face it, Tiffany, when you started, it didn't happen overnight. right? It is something that you had to stay committed to and do it over and over and over again until you started seeing things happening.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that it also, like, when you're first starting out, you're going to be trying a lot of different things. And you're kind of just like throwing spaghetti at the wall and just like kind of seeing what sticks. And then I always recommend like taking even just like maybe once a week or even once a month, going through all of the things that you've done in that month and analyzing what are some of the things that actually got more engagement? What were some of the things that actually like yielded to people messaging me and DMing me? Okay, if it's like me talking about how to get sales, I'm going to make sure that I talk more about that in the next month because that's what my ideal clients are searching for. And I also want to say that I think a lot of people think, oh, if I only focus on one platform, that really like limits the growth that I have. But just from Instagram alone, think about how many different things that you can do. Like you can do Instagram Live, you can do posts, you can do stories, you can do IGTV. There's just so many different things that you can do with just one platform. And it's really utilizing that platform to the best of its abilities and not just seeing like things on the surface level.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes back down to being focused and just doing the one thing and just concentrating on it. Because if you, like we said before, if you're starting a side hustle, your time is so limited rather than being in it full time. And I completely agree with that. So if you're just, choosing one platform and just being on that with the limited time you have, you will see the results. You will get more people contacting you and start sending you DMs and like you do, get discovery calls even. Let's quickly move over to, finessing your niche, but also figuring out who your ideal client is, because some of the audience would be listening to this now and going, yep. Okay. What do you mean ideal client? What do you mean niche? How do I need to zone in on that and be more specific?
So I think a lot of people get ideal client and niche mixed up. And that is something that I have been trying to clarify for a lot of people, even in the content that I produce. And so when I think about niche and ideal client, I'm going to like break it down into a few layers. So at the top, you have industry. So kind of just like the general space that you want to be in. And then under the industry, you have like the segment of people within that industry. And so maybe it's like you want to be a career coach and you want to specifically help people that are working in a 9-to-5 that are not in a tech industry right now. And then you start diving more into the actual ideal client, which is women who are working in a 9-to-5, who are not in a tech industry, who want to start a career in tech. And then from there, then you layer in like the niche, which is like you help these women get from not having a career in tech to actually getting a career in tech. And so it's kind of like a funnel itself where a lot of people think your niche is like the industry, which is like fitness. Like I'm in the fitness niche, but no, you're not in the fitness niche. That's an industry. And so with ideal client, that is like the specific person that you're helping. And that kind of ties into like what they're struggling with, like where they aspire to be. You have the demographics, which is like their age, their gender, potentially how much income they're making. But then you also have the psychographics. So it's like, what keeps them up at night? What are their pains? What are their struggles? What are their hobbies? What are their interests? What do they like? What do they dislike? Even getting down to like what books they read, what food they eat, getting so clear on that. Like that is your ideal client. And then your niche is with this ideal client, what are they struggling with? And where do they aspire to be? And you're the bridge between those two things. And so I think a lot of people get that wrong. It's like ideal client and niche is not the same thing. It's completely different.
I love how you say that as well, because I've even had people coming to me and say, well, so I'm in this niche, but actually what they're describing is the industry, like you're saying. So I love how you're explaining that kind of funnel, that kind of upside down pyramid, and how it all comes together, starting with the industry and finishing off with the niche at the bottom. And oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. It's so much clearer if you look at it from that angle. And yes, for those of you listening, when you have kind of figured out who your ideal client is, The reason why Tiffany is saying is you've got to be so specific about who that ideal client is because then you would know how to talk to that person. You would know how to communicate with that person. You would really talk their language. You would talk about things that they are interested in. You would talk about things that they are not interested in. You would talk about things where they go like, wow, she's very similar to how I'm thinking, you know, she is saying very similar things to what I'm saying. And that's where the attraction comes in as well. And this is not about lying or being inauthentic. What you're just doing is you're just using their vocabulary. You're just using their words. And that's why you need to be so specific. Because once you're very specific and you kind of be in the same zone as your ideal client, they are going to start get attracted to you. Through your words, through your content, because that's where you bring that vocabulary in. And that is super important. You have to understand the concept of knowing who your ideal client is or your customer is, for the fact that you can obviously talk to them and communicate with them directly.
Yeah. And I think one thing to add is that a lot of the times your ideal client is a past version of yourself.
Oh, yes.
Because a lot of us are starting coaching businesses because we want to help people and like genuinely make an impact. And most of the time we went down our own personal development journey, and that's why we want to help people. And so it was really a eye-opening, I guess, experience for me when I ended up focusing my niche on a past version of myself. And that is the same for a lot of clients that I work with as well, is that they've experienced something in the past and now they have to strive to be able to help other people to like fast track that growth from where they're at right now. And so it's not like being manipulative of like using that language. Really just think about, who was I even just 6 months ago? And maybe that's like the person that you want to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, Tiffany, I think this has been a phenomenal episode right here, because so many of the listeners can resonate with this. And there's one little thing that I want to say here as well, is obviously starting a side hustle. And funny enough is I just had a conversation with another lady before we did this podcast, and we were having the exact same conversation about working on your side hustle. And then you get to a point where you go like, do I quit my job now? Do I quit my job now? I hate my job. I don't like being in my job. Do I quit my job and just go full time into my side hustle? This is where you've really got to learn patience, because starting a side hustle is something that will take time. It will develop over time, but you have to have the patience, and you've got to learn that patience, because as soon as you decide to quit your job and go full time into your side hustle, you're cutting off that financial security that you have. By cutting out that financial security, it also means that you are really not doing yourself a favor, because now you're putting yourself in a box. Now you don't have the finances to, number one, support your side hustle, because you know you're going to pay for platforms, you're going to pay for coaches, for courses and things that you're doing. And as soon as you cut off that financial support, or that financial what do you say, safety, that zone, that safety net that you have, you're not going to be able to expand and grow your side hustle. So learn patience, learn the fact that it is going to take time to grow, and it's up to you to make a success of it before you leave your full-time job and go full-time into your side hustle. And hey, you might even just keep it a side hustle for the rest of your life, and you know, enjoy your full-time job and make extra income from your side hustle. I've known people who've done that as well. It doesn't just have to be either or.
Yeah, I also think a lot of people start side hustles because they hate their job. And that was kind of me when I first started. But I always say that you have to lower the resistance that you have at your 9 to 5 and increase the desire to work on your business.
Yeah.
Because if you're increasing the constant like anger and resistance towards being at your 9 to 5, once you go home, you're going to be angry and frustrated and not want to work on your side hustle.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like this interesting play of ensuring that you're lowering that resistance, but also increasing that desire, so that they end up like kind of being on par. And obviously, like, there's different mindsets that go into working a 9 to 5 and being a business owner. But at the same time, it's also important that both of those things are still kind of like at the core of who you are, and not trying to do something just because you want to get out of your 9 to 5, because it's going to set yourself up for success. You're going to try to rush through things. You're going to end up just not doing things with intention to actually get you to the goals that you want to hit. And therefore, it's just going to keep spiraling down into like a lot of negativity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't want to get to a negative state, because that negative energy is not going to help you grow your side hustle and make a success of it. So think about the fact that, you know, even if you get an email in your full-time job and it's really upsetting you, just think about it. Okay, you know what? This is not forever. I am planning what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that is working. And I promise you, things are going to start becoming so much more easier, and you're going to be able to handle a lot more of your emotions. It's all about the emotional growth as well that you've got to go through. So I say this a lot, but hey, when you sign up for entrepreneurship, you sign up for a lot of self-development. So give yourself that flexibility and that time to develop as an individual and to start thinking differently, changing those beliefs, changing your mindset. Because once you go into your side hustle, it is a completely different ball game, and you've got to be open to receive all of those lessons that life gives you.
For sure.
Oh my gosh. Well, Tiffany, this has been so amazing having you here. I'm thrilled to bits the fact that we could have had this conversation, because I know so many of the audience here listening to this can go like, you know what, that just encouraged me to keep on going, either to start my side hustle or to keep pushing forward and making a success of it. Now, before we get going, you've got a free guide that you want to give away for the audience. Why don't you tell us about this guide and what they can expect from it?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it really kind of ties into the conversation that we had about niche, because that was personally something that I struggled with a lot when I first started my business, where I think I mentioned like I pivoted a few times from like nutrition to productivity to really honing in on what I wanted to do. And so this guide is a 10-step framework that really allows you to break down like how to figure out your profitable niche, and also to ensure that you validate that this is something that you want to do, but also something that is a gap in the market. And it's going to fast track your way to really figure out what that niche is, instead of just going through so many different pivots and in a sense wasting a lot of time. And so make sure you check it out. It's a really juicy guide that also has a case study of my own business in there as well.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to have a look as well. So for those of you listening, by all means, the link is below in my show notes. Go and click on it and get that guide right now. Specifically, if you're still trying to figure out what your niche is, where you're heading, and how to be a bit more focused with that, go and get this guide. I think it's going to be a gem resource for you. And then Tiffany, talk to us a little bit, because you and I spoke about, and you said that you've got an excellent coaching program running as well. And I want the audience to hear about this, because there are so many there who's going like, yeah, okay, that's great. I've got a free guide. But some of them would like to take possibly the next step with you and maybe get you to help them as well with their side hustle. So talk to us about the coaching program.
Yeah, for sure. And so the program itself is called Launch Your Hustle, which obviously the name entails. It's really getting you to launch your side hustle. And this program is for the early stage entrepreneur that has some ideas of what they want to do, but doesn't really know how to monetize it yet. And so this is a 4-month group coaching container, which I'm super excited for. It's the first time that I'm running it. We're really going to take you from ideation to launching your online coaching business and being able to sign your first high ticket client, which is absolutely incredible, because once you get your first client, it just ends up spiraling and like snowballing from there to really get that momentum. And so this program is starting in August. And so if you have any questions about it, or if you're interested, you can just send me a message on Instagram.
Amazing. And what we'll do as well is, obviously you can get a hold of Tiffany through her Instagram, and the link, her handle will be there in the show notes as well. So stalk her, get in contact with her, DM her. And if you have any questions, obviously, I'm sure she'd love to get in touch with you and talk to you a little bit about whatever you need help with in order to start your side hustle. Tiffany, thank you so much for being here. This is really awesome. Do you have any final tips or any last words that you want to share with the audience?
I think for the side hustlers that are listening to the podcast is just stick with it. You know, like it's so easy to give up because you've worked on it for a month and you're not getting any traction. But my journey literally started probably 2 years ago, and I didn't officially launch my business until a year ago. And so it took me a while to like figure out what I wanted to do before I actually started my business and officially launched it. And so if you have an idea, if you have the desire to actually start something and become a full-time entrepreneur, just go with it. just stick to it. It's going to be hard work, but it's going to be so, so worth it. And really just ensure that you focus a lot on the mindset as well, because that's like 90% of the work. Focus on ensuring and having that real belief that you can actually achieve all of the goals that you want to hit. And that's really going to set you up for success.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I couldn't have said it better myself. So again, for those of you listening, you can go down to my show notes, get that guide, and obviously get in touch with Tiffany to find out a little bit more about the group coaching program she is running. And again, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your time here with us, and just talking a little bit about a side hustle as well, because let's face it, that's where the majority of us would like to start, or maybe some of you didn't even know that you can start a side hustle while working full time. Hey, that was a light bulb moment for you right here. So again, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And yeah, let's keep in touch. I'd love to hear from you very soon again.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It was such a fun conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Speak soon.
Bye.